This is absolutely scary, frightening. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense, Logic, and Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, y'all know I always say all the time that black people are brainwashed with race, Americanized blacks. And of course, I say how they got this way. This is the big lie narrative. Basically, to paraphrase, it just simply says if you tell a lie big enough, long enough, and loud enough, eventually people will believe the lie is true. And this is what American blacks have basically endured. You've been told this lie big enough, long enough, and loud enough that America is a racist country. From the average American black person, from the time they're born to the time they turn 18 and become an adult, they've been so indoctrinated into this that they believe it's true with no evidence to back it up. And this is why they always have to manufacture nonsense as evidence of racism. This is why they have to hide and run to the past, because they can't tell you how they're being basically oppressing their own lives. So they have to cling to the collective. They have to cling to the past. Anyway, but the reality is that racism today has just simply become any negative interaction with a non-black person, or real or imagined. It could be. They could imagine something, and more often than not, it's imagined negative interaction. They just believe that everybody hates black people for no reason, because again, they've been brainwashed to this narrative. Now, a perfect example of this brainwashing would be the Kyran Lacy Incident. Ever since his lawyer released the evidence showing that he was innocent, they've been losing their mind over this crime racism, even though more evidence has later come out to show that Kyran Lacy was actually guilty and responsible for that accident. Regardless, they're still trying to tell us and trying to show that he's innocent, and the gymnastics that these people are going through to try to do this is beyond belief. They've tried to come up with every excuse in the book. They're saying that, well, he wasn't in the other lane, even though the video evidence clearly shows he was in the other lane. Again, the people are saying this probably only saw that video that the police officer released. They saw that, but they didn't. The video that his lawyer released. They saw that video, but they hadn't seen the other evidence. Now the question has to be, well, how did they see the video from the lawyer? Who told them that? But they didn't tell them about the other evidence that has come out. That's a perfect example of the brainwashing of black victimhood. The places that they go to told them some of the information, some of the story, but they didn't tell them all the story. And then you got the people who will admit, okay, well, yeah, he was driving in the opposite lane. That is true. But he was 80 yards away when he was in the other lane. He was in opposite lane. Not realizing that 80 yards, that amount of distance is absolutely irrelevant when you're talking about vehicles driving on a highway. It was estimated that Kyran Lacy was traveling about 70 miles per hour on LA 21, which the speed limit at that point was about 45 miles per hour. Well, it was estimated that he was traveling like 70 miles per hour. Well, at that speed, it would take a vehicle about 2.3 seconds, a little bit more than 2 seconds to go 80 yards. Not a lot of time. And then when you also factor in the fact you had oncoming cars probably traveling at the speed limit, perhaps maybe a little bit more, the distance is negligible. I mean, you're talking about they have a fraction of a time to respond when you have vehicles also coming your way at 40, 50 miles per hour. They have very little room to maneuver. I mean, very little time to react. So to say that he was 80 yards away is saying absolutely nothing. Again, people who are ignorant and don't know facts. Then they say, well, yeah, he was in that lane, but he moved back into his lane. Yeah, he moved back into his lane once he saw the oncoming cars, and still other people saw him coming and had to respond. So yeah, he did move back into his lane. He moved back into his lane roughly around the time, a little bit before the braking started. All the vehicles who were behind him started braking. So if the cars behind him, the truck, the 18-wheeler, the red 18-wheeler truck started braking at that time, that means that the accident had happened before then. So the accident happened roughly around the time, basically at the same time as he was crossing over back into his lane. People were responding in the opposite lane, were responding to him being in their lane, driving at such a high rate of speed, which gives them fractions of a second to respond. And they will still continue to try to prove this dude's innocent. It's beyond belief. It is absolutely beyond belief that people can be this way so brainwashed, but it's possible. Again, this is not the first time in history that human beings have been this brainwashed. Man, black people in America are just absolutely brainwashed by race. But the question I had to ask though, can American blacks be saved then? Well, the answer to that question is yeah, they can be saved. But it's going to take a major effort. It's going to take a Herculean effort to do so. And I'm gonna have to say it's really truly going to start with white people. I think white folks is what it's going to have to take to save black people. And I'll explain that in another video. But my God, but black people are just absolutely brainwashed. It's to me, being a logical person who actually went through the same thing, and I've heard all of the same nonsense. White folks, racism. Racist police officers, and I always question where, because I never saw it. I never saw no white people trying to do me anything. I never saw the police officer, and I never put myself in a position where the police officers would have to do anything to me. But I never saw these white folks trying to harm me, trying to stop me from achieving anything. And I've been around white folks all my life. That's why I didn't believe it, because I questioned it, because I didn't see it. Unfortunately, the majority of blablacks can't quit, even though they can't see it, but they, for some reason, don't have the wherewithal to question it based off the clear evidence, the obvious evidence that we see in this country. Anyway, yeah, this is, it's absolutely frightening. This condition that you see black people in. It seems like black people today do more crime about racism from the past than the black people who actually lived in the past. My God, anyway, so this is my 2 cents, man. This is really scary to see black people in this condition. And this is why I make these videos, because I just want to do my part in trying to change this and improve the condition of American blacks, because we most certainly can improve, and we can change this around, and we can start ascending and having progress in this country where black people did, who actually lived through what they're crying about. And as always, y'all, until next time.